You have probably seen the spec sheets. A Scania 5.8 rolling out of a Swedish factory with 770 horsepower. A Volvo pulling mountain freight across Norway with 750 horsepower. Meanwhile, every major American interstate is covered in Kenworths, Peterbilts, and Freightliners, and the most powerful engine Cummins sells for a standard American semi-tops out at 605 horsepower. Europe has 770. America has 605. And the question most people land on is, why cannot America build a bigger engine? That's the wrong question. The companies selling 605 horsepower engines in the United States also own the companies selling 750 horsepower engines in Europe. Volvo owns Mack Trucks. Daimler makes both Detroit Diesel and the Mercedes-Benz trucks that run the Alpine routes. PACCAR, which builds Kenworth and Peterbilt, derives its top engine from its own European DAF unit. The technology exists inside the same corporate families. They are choosing not to bring it here. The real answer involves a federal weight limit that has not changed in more than 50 years, a road network built to make high horsepower unnecessary, and one of the most expensive regulatory moments in American industrial history, one that ended with the most iconic engine brand in trucking walking away from the market forever. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why 600 horsepower is the right answer for American roads. Let's start with what everyone gets wrong. The obvious answer is geography. Europe has the Alps, the Pyrenees, and Norwegian coastal routes that climb almost vertically before dropping back to sea level. When a Scania 770S is pulling a 60-ton load up a 12% grade in winter, those 770 horses are not excess, they are survival math. Finland allows truck combinations up to 76 tons, more than twice the American interstate maximum. Sweden is trialing combinations approaching 93 tons. Those loads on those grades justify every horsepower on the spec sheet. So yes, terrain explains why high horsepower engines exist in Europe, but that does not explain why American manufacturers, with direct access to that same technology through their own European subsidiaries, have never brought it here. Volvo sells trucks in North America, but does not offer its 750 horsepower D16 engine in any North American configuration. Daimler's Detroit Diesel tops out at 600 horsepower in the United States market. The decision is not made in an engineering lab. It is made by looking at what American roads actually require. And that is where the terrain argument breaks down. The question is not whether Europe needs more power. The question is why American terrain specifically does not. The answer is a number frozen in place since Gerald Ford was president. But that is only part of the story, and it involves a law written to protect something most people have never thought about while driving over it. The number is 80,000 pounds. That is the federal gross vehicle weight limit for a standard tractor trailer on an American interstate. It was established in 1974, and it has been unchanged for over 50 years. At 80,000 pounds on a flat grade at 65 miles per hour, a well-tuned diesel hits its efficiency peak somewhere around 500 to 600 horsepower. The Cummins X15 at 605 horsepower is operating near the optimum for exactly those conditions. Adding 170 more horsepower does not increase the payload, because the weight limit prevents that. It does not increase the speed, because speed governors already set the ceiling. It just burns fuel for power the operating conditions cannot use. A Finnish operator at 76 tons on a 10% mountain grade genuinely needs 770 horsepower to maintain highway speed. The engine is not showing off. It is doing work that the American regulatory framework never asks an American truck to do. The European Union's standard limit is 40 tons, already 10% heavier than the United States cap. The power gap between European and American trucks tracks almost precisely with the load gap, but this still does not explain why the United States weight limit has not changed in 50 years. American trailers have grown from 40 to 48 to 53 feet. Why has the weight ceiling sat frozen while everything around it evolved? The answer is in the roads. And here's where it gets genuinely strange, because what looks like a restriction turns out to be a design feature. The interstate highway system broke ground in 1956. It was engineered from first principles to move freight continuously at high speed across the longest distances in the industrialized world. Grades were capped at 6% on most corridors, with major freight routes running hundreds of miles below 3%. Bridges were built to handle axle loads distributed across specific distances, and that distribution math, the Federal Bridge Formula, is precisely what the 80,000-pound limit protects. Raise the limit, and you are committing to rebuilding tens of thousands of bridges that were built to a specific load specification. The limit has not changed because the infrastructure it protects has not changed. In 1982, the United States changed its length laws so tractor cabs were excluded from the overall vehicle length calculation. That one change killed the flat-nosed cab over truck in America almost overnight. If the cab does not count against your length, why sit directly above a diesel engine? European trucks kept their flat faces because European Union rules cap total vehicle length at 18.75 meters, and within that envelope, a long nose eats trailer space. The flat face is not a style preference. It is a legal requirement. Scania, the last European manufacturer to offer a long-nose conventional truck, stopped production in 2005 after global sales fell below 1,000 units. Then, layer in 1998. The EPA and DOJ announced $83.4 million in penalties against 7 diesel engine manufacturers: Caterpillar, Cummins, Detroit, Diesel, Mack, Navistar, Volvo, and Renault for installing defeat devices in 1.3 million heavy-duty engines. It was the largest civil environmental penalty in American history. Compliance with the 2004 standards was required 15 months ahead of schedule. Caterpillar, which once held 40% of the U.S. heavy-duty truck engine market, spent over $500 million developing its ACERT emissions technology. When the 2010 standards arrived, the math no longer worked. Caterpillar exited the on-highway engine market entirely. The most dominant engine brand in American trucking history. Gone. That's what pushing engine limits looked like inside the American regulatory framework. $500 million. Then an exit. The question was never whether American manufacturers could build a 770 horsepower diesel. It was whether the roads, the weight limits, and the regulatory environment made it worth anything. And the answer to that is written into a road you have probably driven on this week. The American interstate covers 48,000 miles of controlled access, engineered freight infrastructure, no traffic lights, no cross traffic, maximum grades of 4 to 6%, with the flattest corridors running hundreds of miles below 3%. On that road, at 80,000 pounds and 65 miles per hour on a 3% grade, a 605 horsepower engine runs near its thermodynamic sweet spot. That is why American semis average 6 to 8 miles per gallon at maximum legal weight. That figure is not an accident. It is what happens when the road, the weight limit, and the engine are matched correctly. Add 170 horsepower and nothing improves. The payload is capped. The speed is governed. You have added fuel cost with no added output. For a fleet running 1,000 trucks, that math is devastating. That strawberry flat at your grocery store arrived from California in February, 2,000 miles at 605 horsepower. The pharmaceutical shipment at your pharmacy rode in a temperature-controlled trailer, pulled by a Cummins X15, across a freight network specifically engineered to make more power unnecessary. Every time you have merged onto an interstate, you have been on the infrastructure that explains that number. So here is where you actually land. You came in thinking Europe builds more powerful trucks because European manufacturers are more ambitious. Then you learned American companies own the same technology and choose not to bring it here. Then you learned the 80,000-pound weight ceiling caps, what horsepower is actually useful. Then you learned the interstate itself was engineered to make extreme horsepower unnecessary. Then you learned what happens when a company tries to push past those limits. Caterpillar spent $500 million and walked away in 2010. The Scania 770S is not a better truck for American roads. It is the right truck for Finnish mountain passes at 167,000 pounds on 10% grades. On an American interstate at 80,000 pounds and 65 miles per hour, it would be the most expensive way to get the same result. That 605 horsepower figure is the output of 50 years of roads, weight laws, bridge engineering, and regulatory pressure, all converging on one number that happens to be exactly right for the conditions it serves. Next time you pass a semi on the interstate, you are not looking at a truck missing 165 horsepower. You are looking at a system of road, law, weight, and engine calibrated to move everything on your shelves and at your door with exactly as much power as the road requires. And if you think the power limits are interesting, wait until we get into why those same trucks are effectively banned from the most direct route to almost every major American city.